Japheth, the forgotten son whose name echoes through time, lost in the shadows of history. Yet behind that shadow lies a legacy so profound it shaped the world we know today. How can a name so obscure carry the weight of empires? Why has the tale of Japheth been hidden, buried beneath layers of time, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? What if I told you that the very foundations of civilization, our cultures, our laws, our philosophies, owe their existence to this man? What if Japheth, not Shem or Ham, held the key to unlocking the secrets of the ancient world? Can you feel the stirring of something ancient, something forgotten, calling out from the depths of history, begging to be heard? In this journey, we will uncover the mysteries of Japheth's legacy, from the birth of empires to the silent forces that shaped the destinies of nations. We will explore how his descendants forged paths across the earth, spreading knowledge, culture, and power. From Greece to Rome, to the farthest corners of the earth, Japheth's bloodline is the silent architect of what we now call the modern world. Prepare to witness the hidden hand of prophecy, as we unravel why Japheth's descendants play a pivotal role in the unfolding drama of salvation. As you listen, allow your heart to be open to the profound truth that God's design, though mysterious, is perfect, and Japheth's legacy is no accident. You will understand why the rise of the West, the birth of philosophy, the foundations of law and justice, all trace back to Japheth's people. And you will discover how his legacy is not merely historical, it's alive, breathing, and influencing our world today. Let the echoes of history guide you. Let the truth of Japheth's legacy awaken you to the greater story that is still unfolding. The mystery, the power, the influence of Japheth, once hidden, now revealed, awaits. Why was Japheth hidden in history? The world has long known of Shem and Ham, their names etched into the foundation of Scripture, their legacies entwined with the fate of nations. But Japheth, his name, too often spoken in silence, too often dismissed, holds within it the roots of empires and civilizations. Yet why, in the great tapestry of history, was he forgotten? Why was Japheth, whose descendants carried the torch of wisdom, justice, and expansion, cast into the shadows? What if I told you the very earth beneath your feet, the laws that govern your life, and the culture you embrace today, owe their origins to Japheth? His descendants laid the groundwork for the rise of Greece, Rome, Persia, and the nations of the West. The very civilizations that gave birth to philosophy, science, democracy, and law, these were founded by those who trace their bloodline back to Japheth. Can you imagine that? A name once overlooked, now revealed to be the silent architect of the modern world. Japheth's story is not simply one of bloodlines. It is a story of divine purpose, woven into the fabric of history long before the great civilizations rose. He was not the chosen one, not the one through whom the Messiah would come, but his legacy remains just as profound, just as vital. From the shores of Greece to the vast lands of the Romans, Japheth's children spread across the earth, carrying with them the seed of civilization. They built cities, they established laws, and they created the institutions that still stand today. The very buildings you walk through, the streets you drive on, the concepts of justice and liberty, these all began with Japheth's sons. But why has his story been so carefully concealed? Why do we hear so little about him in the annals of history? Could it be that his influence was too vast, too powerful, to be understood in the context of our limited understanding of divine providence? Japheth's name was meant to resonate throughout time, yet it has been muffled, hidden in the footnotes of history, waiting for the right moment to be unveiled. The answer lies in a deeper truth. Japheth's legacy was never meant to stand in the spotlight. His was the quiet strength that supported the world, the unsung hero who, through his children, would carry the divine plan forward, not in prominence, but in preparation. The truth, hidden for centuries, is that Japheth's descendants were the builders of the world, laying the foundations for the very civilization that would carry the message of Christ to the farthest corners of the earth. What will you discover about Japheth's hidden role? In this exploration, we uncover the rich history of Japheth not as an obscure biblical figure, but as a linchpin in the divine narrative of human civilization. We trace the rise of his descendants from the Greek philosophers whose wisdom shaped the foundations of Western thought to the Roman Empire that crafted the laws still upheld in courtrooms today. Their journeys were not just physical, they were spiritual, creating the very vessels that would carry the gospel to the world. As you listen, you will begin to see Japheth not as a forgotten footnote, but as a central figure in the divine drama. His descendants were the bridge between the ancient world and the world to come. Their influence is woven throughout history, from the rise of the greatest empires to the creation of the institutions that sustain modern life. The world you know today, its cultures, its laws, its systems of thought, are all reflections of Japheth's silent but profound legacy. Consider for a moment the legacy of Greece. The philosophers of ancient Greece, whose ideas about democracy, ethics, and logic form the foundation of Western civilization, were descendants of Japheth. Their teachings still echo through the halls of universities today, guiding the way we think, the way we govern, and the way we interact with one another. From Socrates to Plato to Aristotle, their wisdom has shaped the very framework of modern society. And then there is Rome, whose empire spanned continents, whose legal systems still influence courts today. The Roman Republic, with its focus on justice, equality, and civil rights, was built upon the same principles that Japheth's descendants carried with them from the distant past. The Roman law code, still cited by judges across the world, echoes the principles of fairness and equity that were first envisioned by Japheth's heirs. Japheth's story is not just about the past, it's about the present. His legacy is embedded in the very structure of the world around you. When you sit in a courtroom, or when you read a law, or when you study philosophy, remember that it was Japheth's descendants who laid the foundation for all of it. Their quiet strength has shaped the world and continues to do so in ways we may never fully understand. The true beauty of Japheth's story lies not in his prominence, but in his humility. He did not seek the spotlight. He did not seek to be the one through whom the messianic promise would come. Instead, Japheth was content to build, to lay the groundwork, to create the institutions that would hold the world together. His legacy is not one of fame, but of purpose, of a deep and abiding commitment to the divine plan. This is the lesson of Japheth, that greatness does not always come in the form of fame or recognition. Sometimes the greatest influence is the quiet strength that supports the world without asking for attention. Japheth's legacy reminds us that our purpose is not always about standing in the spotlight, but about building, creating, and supporting the divine plan in ways that may never be fully recognized by the world. As you reflect on the story of Japheth, ask yourself, what is my role in the divine plan? How can I contribute to the world not through fame, but through quiet strength? Like Japheth, you too have the potential to shape the world, not through recognition, but through your actions, your service, and your commitment to a higher purpose. Japheth's legacy is not one to be overlooked. It is a silent, powerful force that has shaped the course of history and will continue to do so long after we are gone. Let us honor his legacy by recognizing the quiet strength within ourselves and by embracing our own role in the divine plan. Japheth's place in God's divine plan. There are whispers in the wind, quiet echoes from the past, reverberating with a truth long forgotten. Japheth, the son of Noah, the one who did not inherit the messianic bloodline, but whose legacy runs just as deep. Why was it that Japheth, so often overlooked, became the cornerstone upon which God's plan for the world would rest? His descendants, though not the chosen lineage, were destined to shape the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. Japheth's role was not in the spotlight, but in the quiet, in the expansion, in the building of empires that would one day cradle the light of the gospel. Japheth was not the one who would carry the redemptive thread from Eden to Bethlehem. His place was not to bear the Messiah, but that was never the plan. Instead, God chose Japheth to lay the foundations, to widen the borders, to prepare the world for the fullness of his grace. From the bloodline of Japheth came the nations that would hold the torch of civilization, the Greeks who gave us philosophy, the Romans who gave us law, the Persians who bridged the East and West. Japheth was the architect of these civilizations, whose legacy is alive in every country, in every city, in every institution today. In this, there is a profound lesson. God's plan is not always what we expect. The firstborn does not always carry the promise. The chosen one does not always follow the expected path. Japheth's destiny was not to lead in the way we might think, but his quiet work set the stage for something far greater. And in this, we find our own purpose, often in places we least expect. Japheth's story tells us that we don't have to be in the spotlight to make a difference. Sometimes it is the quiet builders, the unseen hands, that lay the strongest foundations. The Prophecies of Japheth, unveiling the hidden key. What is the connection between Japheth's legacy and the great prophecies that shape the end times? It is easy to think that Japheth's descendants are distant from the divine narrative of redemption. But the Bible whispers something else. In the words of Ezekiel, we find the distant names of Japheth's children linked to the kingdoms that will rise at the end of days. Magog, Meshech, Tubal, nations whose names reverberate through the corridors of prophecy, whose people are destined to play a role in the final chapters of history. It is no coincidence that the same bloodlines that established powerful empires are now stirring the world in the latter days. The descendants of Japheth, scattered across the earth, have formed the political, military, and economic powers that will shape the final unfolding of God's plan. The modern powers of the West, Russia, America, and Europe, carry within them the legacy of Japheth's children. These are the nations that, according to prophecy, will gather in the final days. They are not just remnants of history, but living, breathing participants in the divine narrative that has been unfolding since the days of Noah. We stand on the threshold of understanding the deeper layers of God's sovereignty. Japheth's story was always part of the divine plan, but it was hidden, waiting for a time when the scales would fall from our eyes. These ancient names, these forgotten nations, are the key to unlocking the mysteries of the end times. It is no small thing that Japheth's children, though far from the bloodline of the Messiah, are still intricately woven into the fabric of God's redemptive story. They, too, are part of the plan to bring about the culmination of all things. As we look at the world today, at the political and spiritual powers that shape our lives, we begin to see how Japheth's legacy continues to unfold before our eyes. It is in the rise of these nations that we find echoes of the ancient prophecies, the whispers of a world that is being prepared for the final revelation. What does this mean for us? It means that we are living in a time when the truth of Japheth's legacy is becoming clear. The world we live in, the systems we navigate, the governments that rule, the cultures that thrive, are all part of a grand tapestry, a plan that was set in motion long before we were born. This realization should stir something deep within us. We are part of something much greater than ourselves, something divinely orchestrated. Japheth's story reminds us that even when we feel unseen, even when we seem to be on the outskirts of history, we are never truly forgotten. God's plan is always unfolding, always working, even in the quiet, even in the unseen. Just as Japheth's legacy paved the way for the nations that would shape the world, so too does our work, no matter how small it may seem, contribute to the greater purpose that God has for us all. As we continue to explore Japheth's hidden role in prophecy, we realize that the story of redemption is far more expansive than we could ever have imagined. It stretches across generations, across nations, and across time, and in this we find hope, knowing that God's plan is unfolding in every corner of the earth, in every heart that is open to His grace. The descendants of Japheth were chosen to build, to expand, to create the world that would one day receive the gospel. And now, it is our turn to continue the work they began, to build, to expand, to carry the light of Christ to every corner of the earth, just as Japheth's children carried the light of civilization across the world. In this way, we become part of the same story, part of the same divine plan that began with Noah's blessing and continues through the ages. The great civilizations built by Japheth's lineage. Imagine for a moment the dust of ancient lands, where the first sparks of civilization flickered in the hearts of men. From Japheth's bloodline, civilizations arose, stretching their arms across vast landscapes, birthing the very foundations of the world we know today. The cities, the laws, the philosophies, they were all born from his children, whose names we may never have fully known, yet whose influence we still feel in every stone of our cities, in every law that governs us, in every thought that shapes our beliefs. Japheth's descendants were the builders, the architects of the world, not through force or might, but through wisdom, through philosophy, through the quiet expansion of ideas that would later shape the world. Look at the Greeks, the very heart of Western thought, the cradle of democracy. Japheth's son, Javan, gave rise to the Greeks, who spoke the language of reason and beauty, of logic and justice. From their minds came the ideas that would ripple through time, influencing every generation that followed. Then there is Rome, whose empire shaped laws, systems, and governance. Japheth's descendants founded Rome, building the very framework upon which much of the modern world still stands. Think of the roads that lead you to opportunity, the laws that guide you through justice. They were built by the children of Japheth. It is in their legacy that we see the triumph of order over chaos, of wisdom over ignorance. The influence of Japheth's lineage cannot be overstated. It was through his children that the ancient world was connected, that knowledge was shared across vast distances, and that the philosophies that would shape future generations were born. From the chaos of the flood came the calm of civilization. Japheth's children built the very scaffolding upon which the modern world stands today. Japheth's legacy in modern times. We are surrounded by Japheth's legacy, often unaware of how deeply it has shaped our lives. Look around you, at the roads that connect cities, at the laws that protect you, at the schools that teach you. They are all the fruit of Japheth's line, grown in distant lands, nurtured by the seeds planted long ago. From the United States to Europe to Russia, Japheth's descendants spread across the earth, planting seeds that would one day grow into the mighty nations we know today. But what of the deeper meaning of this? What of the spiritual implications of Japheth's legacy? Japheth's story is not just one of empire building, it is one of preparation. He was not chosen to carry the messianic bloodline, but his children carried the weight of civilization. They prepared the world for the arrival of the Savior, not through their own glory, but through the very structure they created. Their influence was hidden yet profound, shaping the world's stage for something greater. They prepared the soil for the gospel to be sown, laying down the roads and the language through which God's word would spread. In our modern world, we are the inheritors of Japheth's legacy. We walk on the paths his children built. We live in the cities they founded. And we speak the language of justice, of philosophy, of reason that they gave us. But with this legacy comes a responsibility, a call to continue the work they began. Japheth's children built, not for themselves, but for the future. We must now carry that torch and build not for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Japheth's role in the prophetic plan. The story of Japheth is more than just history, it is prophecy. The descendants of Japheth, though not the ones to carry the messianic bloodline, are woven into the very fabric of God's plan for the world. From their bloodlines came the nations that would play a pivotal role in the final days, the nations that would gather at the end of time, just as Ezekiel's prophecy foretold. Magog, Meshech, Tubal. These names may seem distant, but they are the keys to understanding the prophetic future that is unfolding even now. The nations of the West, Russia, Europe, and the United States, carry within them the legacy of Japheth's line. They are not merely historical players, they are prophetic ones. The story of Japheth's descendants is not confined to the past. It is a living, breathing part of the narrative that continues to shape our world today. The powers of the West, from their early beginnings in Japheth's line, are destined to fulfill the prophecies written in Ezekiel and Daniel. These nations, though distant from the direct lineage of Christ, play an essential role in the divine drama that is still unfolding. As we look at the world today, we see the convergence of Japheth's legacy and God's prophetic plan. The nations that were born from his children are rising once again, preparing the world for the culmination of all things. In these times, we must look to Japheth's story, not just for historical understanding, but for spiritual guidance. Japheth's children were not the chosen ones. Yet, they were called to prepare the world for the coming of the Savior. In this, we see a reflection of God's eternal purpose, that all things, no matter how obscure, no matter how hidden, are part of his perfect plan. Japheth's role, though seemingly secondary, was essential to the unfolding of history, and his legacy continues to shape the world today. We too must recognize our place in this divine plan. Like Japheth, we may not be in the spotlight, but our actions, our work, our contributions are part of something far greater. Just as Japheth's descendants prepared the world for Christ's coming, we too are called to prepare the world for the second coming. We are called to build, to create, to lay the foundations for future generations, just as Japheth's children did for us. The story of Japheth is not just one of ancient history. It is a living testament to God's divine plan, unfolding in ways we may not fully understand. But as we recognize the legacy of Japheth's line, we are reminded that no part of God's plan is ever wasted. Everything, even the seemingly insignificant, is woven into the tapestry of his will. As we look at the world around us, let us remember that Japheth's legacy is not just a story of the past, it is a call to action for the present, a reminder that we too are part of God's greater plan. As the sun sets behind the mountains, casting its golden rays upon the world, we stand at the edge of something vast, something eternal. A story written in the stars unfolds before us. A story not just of history, but of purpose, of destiny. The story of Japheth, a name long forgotten, yet whose legacy has shaped the course of the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. It is a legacy that calls out to us across the centuries, urging us to look beyond what we see, to see the hand of God at work in every corner of history, in every nation, in every moment of our lives. Japheth was not the chosen one, not the one to carry the messianic bloodline. But in his quiet, humble place in the tapestry of creation, he laid the foundation for the world we live in today. His descendants built empires, established laws, created the very institutions that guide us. And through them, God's plan unfolded, not with grandeur or spectacle, but with quiet strength, with steady hands that built, not for glory, but for the future. They paved the way for the gospel, for the light that would one day shine through the darkest of nights. In every street, every corner of the cities we walk through, Japheth's legacy echoes. The laws we follow, the justice we seek, the philosophies that shape our minds, all trace back to his descendants. And yet, his story has been hidden, obscured, as if it were too humble, too quiet to be recognized. But as we uncover the truth, as we follow the thread of Japheth's journey, we realize that his legacy was never about fame. It was never about being the one who stood in the spotlight. It was about being faithful, about laying the groundwork for something greater than oneself. And just like Japheth, we are called to build. We are called to lay the foundation, not for our own glory, but for the generations that will come after us. Each act of kindness, each step we take in faith, each word we speak in love, it all builds. It all contributes to the grand tapestry of God's plan. The story of Japheth teaches us that even when we are not seen, even when our work goes unnoticed, it matters. It is part of a greater purpose, part of a divine design that stretches across time and space. In the world today, as we look at the nations that Japheth's descendants founded, we see how God's hand has been at work, shaping the world for the coming of his kingdom. The rise of the West, the creation of law and philosophy, the spread of knowledge, all of it is part of the preparation for the gospel. God used Japheth's children to build the very world that would one day carry his light to the ends of the earth. And now, as we look around us, we see the continuation of that work. We see the world still being shaped by the legacy of Japheth, still being prepared for the coming of Christ. But this is not just a story of the past. It is a story of the present, of what we are called to do right now. We are the descendants of Japheth in spirit. We are the ones who must continue the work of building, of laying foundations, of spreading light in a world that so desperately needs it. And just as Japheth's children were not the ones to carry the messianic bloodline, but were essential to the divine plan, so too are we. Our lives, our work, our faith, it all matters. It is all part of something far greater than ourselves. So as you walk through your day, as you go about your work, remember Japheth. Remember that even in the quiet, even in the unseen, there is purpose. God is working through you, just as he worked through Japheth's descendants to build the world we live in today. And just as Japheth's legacy lives on in the foundations of our world, so too will your legacy live on in the hearts and lives of those you touch. If you feel that this video has touched your soul, if it has helped you find light in the darkest of days, I invite you to support this journey. Every small act of kindness, every bit of encouragement helps to spread this message of hope and love. Your energy, your presence is invaluable, and I thank you with all my heart for being a part of this journey. Let us continue to share the light, to build, to lay the foundations for a world that reflects God's love. If this video has brought you closer to the truth, closer to understanding your place in his divine plan, leave a comment, share your thoughts. Let's continue to grow together, to build together, to share the light that Japheth's legacy has helped to bring into the world. Thank you, from the depth of my heart, for your support, your love, and your light.